Mary Kay, we talked about Daniel Carlson. Look, Dustin Hopkins is a guy who was a drafted kicker that ended up not sticking with his original team and has gone on to have a nice career. Will the Browns regret this move? Or if Cade York goes on and has a nice career, whether it's Daniel Carlson like or Dustin Hopkins like, whatever it is, if he goes on and has a long career in the NFL, do we still look back at this move and say it's a move they had to make?
I think so. And that's what I'm going to be writing about when I sit down here at my computer after we're done with this pod. This was a chance they had to take right now because this is a team that is trying to get to the Super Bowl this year. So they can't have a shaky kicker. In addition to the fact that they do have these 3 AFC North games in their first 4, and we've talked about that a lot on this pod. I mean, you have to start strong. You have to be really, really strong coming out of the gate. And not only are they going up against a lot of good teams, but they're going up against a lot of good kickers in those first 4 weeks too. Some of the best in the NFL. So they can't have this weak link on the team, not just for those first 4 games, but for the whole entire season, which everyone on this football team is poised to try to get this team into the playoffs. And then, of course, the goal is the Super Bowl. Now, who knows how far they're going to get, but they just can't afford to do this at this point in time. So they had to sacrifice a long-term prospect for possible short-term gains.
When he started talking about how that year had tested everything for him, like, it was just very definitive, like, language. And I know Mary Kay, like, when we talked after that interview, and even then, this was the quote I couldn't stop thinking about too today. When he said, I was talking to him about the struggles he went through at LSU versus the struggles he went through with the Browns. And he told me, it's the same as college. There's just a lot more on the line. You're on contract. You have your livelihood at stake. And it's a lot more cutthroat because there's a lot of good guys that could take your job. And I thought, like, 3 weeks later, we talked to him on locker cleanout day. He ended the year, he made all his kicks. So he was like 8 of 8 the last 3 games. But looking back on that quote, especially now, I wonder if that never fully got out of his head. So I don't know if we'll ever, like, know the full story of how it transpired here and went down for him here. It might end up in the long run looking like the Browns made a mistake, but maybe he never would come into his own here because of what Mary Kay is saying, everything that was hanging around him psychologically here. I think it was a lot. And it's a lot to deal with when you're 22 years old too, at a position that is like, I don't know, like 60% mental. Let's like generously say a 60-40 split between the mental and physical here.
And I think along those lines, it's worth, Cade kicked at LSU. Like he didn't kick at like Kent State. Like, he kicked in the toughest environments, like environments way tougher than you'll ever face in the NFL. LSU, Alabama, I mean, he's kicked in some of the biggest, most fierce environments you'll ever see. So I do agree. I think there may be a change of scenery factor here where he just needs to get out of Cleveland and get a fresh start. And I do want to add with the Daniel Carlson stuff, it was 2 games, and it was 1 bad game. And he missed 1 kick the rest of the year. He missed 1 field goal the rest of his rookie season. I think that was more a case of bad process by Minnesota than anything else. Like, you can't give up on a guy after 1 bad football game, which is what they did. And then he goes on and misses 1 kick the rest of his rookie year. Whereas, look, Cade went 24-32 last year and he missed 2 extra points. So he was certainly far from perfect, which is why we're here now. And I think that, yes, there's a world where Cade York goes on and becomes really good, and maybe it is a Daniel Carlson-esque situation, but I don't think we can look back at the Browns' process here and say that it was as flawed as it was in Minnesota when they just made a knee-jerk reaction.